Welcome to Mindless Entertainment. My name is Jesse Milestone, and before you ask, yes, I am wearing a camouflage shirt underneath a camouflage jacket. Why am I doing this? It's really not important. What is important is that you would think that after all of this time, I would run out of issues with Disney Star Wars, and yet it feels like I am just getting started. So what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about an element that has been completely absent from the Disney Star Wars films, and very noticeably so. It's really absent from a lot of cinema today, but it's incredibly noticeable that it's not in the Disney Star Wars movies because it is so prevalent and important in the original trilogy, and even the prequels, actually. So what is this element we're talking about? This element is allegory. In case you're not familiar with storytelling terms, allegory is essentially when you talk about an issue, you frame an issue or an event or something through a different lens. So you're not using the actual event, you're not using the actual issue, the actual words for the issue to describe the issue or talk about the issue or commentate on the issue. You are putting that through a different lens. Example, Star Wars. Star Wars doesn't talk about black people, Asian people, white people, women, men, etc. It uses aliens and droids to make its commentaries about diversity. Now, why is this better than just being like, look at us, we made a black guy a janitor, stormtrooper, and we made a woman powerful, everybody sing our praises. Why that's better than that thing is because, well, in case it's not obvious, you don't feel like someone is assaulting you and beating you senseless over the head with this stupid commentary. It's just there. It just is there. It doesn't draw focus. It fits in the world. Does it make sense in Star Wars to be thinking about diversity in terms of the color of skin or male, female, etc. a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away? No, it doesn't. This place doesn't have the same race relations that the U.S. has or other countries. There is no history of slavery, of enslaved black people in the Star Wars universe that we're aware of. There's no documented history of the patriarchy in the Star Wars society. These aren't things that you can just have conversations about. You don't just talk about them like we do in everyday conversation in society because they don't freaking exist in Star Wars. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot have your commentary on these ideas. You absolutely can. Which is, again, where the allegory element comes in the originals, where you have you're talking about movies that came out, a decade after the biggest civil rights movement in our country. And instead of, and what it's able to do, which is so brilliant, this is a byproduct of allegory that's so great too, boom, is first of all, we started off with this brilliant comment on diversity, on acceptance of difference, by popping into the cantina and just being like, weird alien, weird alien, weird alien, weird alien, looking all different sorts of ways, speaking in different languages, making different kinds of sounds, interacting with the world in different ways, and it's all cool. Everyone can come into this cantina, and even though they're all pretty much criminals, it's a nice melting pot of diversity, of difference, where we can be like, yeah, look, all these people from all these different planets and places living different lives with different backgrounds can all come here and just chill. Hooray. So again, like I said, the byproduct. Here's the great byproduct about having your diversity-based discussions through this lens, is now your movie can do something like, be like, bam, main black character, bam, main female character with a bunch of power, super ultra liberated woman, if you will, and it's not a thing. It's not like we're not talking about it, we're not freaking out about it. No one's in the streets being like, I can't believe that Princess Leia had the nerve to talk back to Han Solo. I can't believe that a black man owned an entire city. Oh my goodness, the shock, the horror. Instead, we're immersed in this world where those things aren't real. Those things don't matter. Our attention is being drawn to that, so we don't have people either celebrating or being outraged by those facts. We just accept them, which, by the way, is how it's supposed to work. I mean, real people who want real equality understand that it's not supposed to be like, oh my God, look at this thing that this black person was able to accomplish. It's just like, yeah, that should be a normal thing. We should just accept this as a normal thing. So Star Wars was able to create a world in which this is a normal thing, but we can still understand and recognize that in society today, at the time especially, right, these conversations are still happening. Great. So here have some diversity sprinkled in, and have some brilliant little commentaries on that diversity by having Chewbacca and Han, that relationship where Chewbacca he's the sidekick, yeah, but he's not uncultured, he's not uncivilized, he's not stupid, and he just talks. He talks, and we don't feel the need to translate for him or make some big deal about how he's unintelligible. And Han just understands him. They just converse, and Han understands him, and we by extension understand him by Han's understanding. Sometimes, yeah, of course, a character, and this happens also with Luke and R2D2. Same thing, R2 beep boop 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 beep, and Luke just understands and responds. And this is actually one of the places where actually the dialogue does a really nice job. And it's hard to say about George Lucas because he's not exactly the world's greatest dialogue writer. But where the dialogue actually does a really nice job of sometimes you understand what they're saying because the actors are parroting back what they have theoretically said, but it's all put into context, right? We don't have to be told again or translated for what's happening, what's going on. We're just put into a world where like, oh, these two different people with different languages are communicating, and we just understand them because they're all people. They're all on the same side, fighting for the same thing with common goals. And we understand that there's a greater, more universal language that exists there that transcends this language barrier. So bam, allegory. What a beautiful message for it to create. Another awesome example, I love this because it's such a little throwaway line that just has so much to unpack, especially considering the time that it happened, is when the bartender, when Luke comes into the cantina, he points at the droids and is like, we don't serve their kind here. They'll have to wait outside. And like, wow, what a big statement to unpack, because it's not just, now we're not talking just, this is not just about the idea of racism, you know, of course this segregation is what this is calling out, without having to be so on the nose or overt about it. We're getting new information, we're new in this world, we're less than half an hour into this brand new world, and we're being told, okay, droids don't have the same rights as people. Cool, that's information for us to sit and store and process as we're digesting the rest of this world, and that's as deep as it has to go, which is again the brilliant part about allegory, is if you don't care about those discussions, you don't have to have them. They're not being forced upon you. Again, that understanding that droids don't have the same rights as humans in this world is as deep as your understanding needs to go. Now, if you want to let your brain be tickled by this notion, now it brings you even deeper into the idea of, oh, okay, well, here's, we still have status, we still have staggering. It's going to bring up those memories of segregation, which at the time most people had lived through to some extent. It's going to call up those things to mind. It's going to bring up certain questions like, in this universe, why don't robots have the same rights as people? And it brings those questions up. Like, obviously, we've examined this in a very obvious way, and most smart people have come to the conclusion that the color of your skin doesn't make you more or less of a person than anybody else. So let's transcend past that. Now we're talking artificial intelligence. We're talking, let's look at these two different species, if you will, groups of people, and what types of rights should this artificial intelligence have? And there are the beginnings of some of these conversations as science fiction brought in robot sentience into a lot of movie making, which is of course conversations that have to be happening nowadays because we are starting to get that artificial intelligence technology in the real world. So we're starting to have those discussions already about what types of rights, and of course we have more and more movies being made about that now, but what types of rights should robots be afforded in relation to people? And so that depth is all there in that one simple line. They don't have to dwell on it. They don't have to smack you over the head with a frying pan with it, right? They don't have to cut off your arm and leave it on the cantina floor over it. They just drop that little line in there, boom, and let you do the rest, because that's allegory for you. Just, here you go. Here's a thought, here's a notion, here's like a way of looking at things that we're not really going to spend a lot of time on. We're just going to sprinkle into your film and enjoy it if you want to, and ignore it if you want to. And that's no big deal either way, right? Or another great example, of course, is Canto Bite. Let's talk about corporate greed by having me stand here and tell you about how corporate greed is bad. By the way, Finn, did you know these guys are all corporate assholes and they're bad? So we start out in the first movie of the trilogy having a commentary about greed right away. Of course, Han having to make the choice between money and his friends. And if you didn't think that this decision had anything to do with money, well, Leia gives a very nice, one of the more on-the-nose lines where she says, I knew there was more to you than money. And he makes the whole deal, about rescuing her in the first place, of being about a reward. So now we have that first, without any corporate, overly politicized emphasis on any part of this, just the idea of greed over compassion. Boom, dropped in there. Bam. And now we revisit this idea in Empire Strikes Back with Lando. Lando, corporate greed over human compassion, right? Yeah, you could say there's a humanitarian interest in him protecting his people and his city and whatnot, but you really get the sense And it's the same sort of betrayal. It's beautiful framing, too, because Han almost committed this betrayal in the movie before, and Lando does the same thing and then has to redeem himself for it as well. So now we're talking about this, again, very subtly, very dropped in there. You don't have to pay attention to it. You don't have to think about it if you don't want to. Just bam, right in there. Corporate greed, corporate interests, business interests, interest in making money and keeping your holdings and your life savings, etc., over human compassion, over giving that up for the greater good of your friends, as well as the galaxy. So bam, dropped in there, nice and subtly. Not, let's sit down and have this little conversation back and forth about all these people living it up in their fancy lifestyles are actually selling weapons to the Empire. No, all that stuff, we don't need to be told that. We're not stupid. Disney, stop treating us like we're morons, which is another part of why allegory has gone, is because Disney doesn't trust its audience to actually think and have thoughts, which is just damn insulting to us. I'm sorry, give us a little more credit. Give us some credit for that, the ability to analyze and logic and reason things, so that bothers me a lot. And even in the prequels, man, you see this. You sit down with the Jedi Council. You have men and women. You also have different sizes, different shapes, different colors, different species all represented to show that the vanguard of good in the world looks like anybody, could look like anybody. In fact, that the guy in the front is this tiny little green old man. And then also, again, you have this great idea, rather than being so worried about meeting certain diversity quotas in casting, is you have aliens sprinkled in to add that flavor, like Jar Jar Binks, who was a failed experiment, yes, but the idea of having the alien sidekick, the comic relief sidekick, now we don't have to ask any questions of like, well, you cast a black man as your sidekick character, which was great because you added diversity, but you made him the comic relief sidekick, which kind of takes away from his value as a man. Fuck it, just make it a goddamn alien. Now there's no question. He's the goofy alien. He's the comic relief, obviously. Any questions? No, moving on, right? Other little things like having the very Men in Black-esque alien informant that gave Obi-Wan all the info he needed in Attack of the Clones, right? Great little spot to sprinkle an alien character and bam, add to the richness of the world around you. General Grievous, an alien adversary. And these little bits, these little elements enrich this world, expand this world, make it feel a lot bigger, and a lot fuller and a lot more complex. And then when you have a complex world, you start thinking about these complex notions. And what do we get in terms of alien characters in the new ones? We get Moss, who really hasn't done anything yet. And in terms of relevant aliens, that's it. She's the only one. Aliens, gone, off, just nah. I mean, so you look at The Last Jedi, what a missed opportunity. The Codebreaker could have been an alien. I mean, obviously should have been Lando, but since they weren't going that route, should have been an alien. Definitely great spot to drop an alien. Boom, right in your plot. Enrich this a little bit. Get a little more flavor, a little more sense of the galaxy. And how interesting would that be? How much more interesting would it be now to have Finn, who was a product of the Empire? As we all know, the Empire is racist against aliens. Have him interacting with an alien for the first time. Or better yet, and this is one that let me know what you guys think about this. Because for me, this is like, what if Rose had been a Twi'lek? Right? So Paige is like the typical Twi'lek, super, I mean, they've already existed as sex symbols in the Star Wars universe, right? So why not go with that route, and then she dies, and then maybe like Rose is a Twi'lek with body image issues, not like obviously let's make it all teenage cry about it, but maybe she's kind of a weird looking Twi'lek, or maybe like one of her ear things didn't grow right, So we're now, let's have, rather than on the nose, like we're gonna desexualize the Asian stereotype in movies, now we're just having a general all-encompassing, affects everybody commentary on beauty and body image and whatnot and what have you, without making it about the politics of what actor did we hire and what stupid hairstyle did we make them wear and what ugly uniform did we stick them in. Right now you actually have some deeper commentary, and once again, these Finn-alien relations. Now you have a situation, now if we're building a relationship there between those two characters, how much more interesting is that now having Finn being someone who's been isolated from interacting with aliens, or being isolated from ever looking at aliens as people, as equals, as the same as him, now suddenly developing feelings for one or attachments to one. Now you have an interesting story, and now you have allegory. But why? Why couldn't Disney? Why Disney? Why wouldn't you? Anyway, I'm interested to know, maybe I'm like so far off base that nobody learns anything from allegory, but I don't think that's right. So what life lessons did you learn through Star Wars that were told via allegory? That is what I would like to know from you guys today. If you enjoyed this video here, there's a button to let me know that, and leave your comments and do the sharing and hitting the bell thing, and we'll talk again real soon. Like I said, I'm just getting started. So that's all. And double camo for the